Welcome once again to Clear Skies Retirement with Jay Kirkwood at Secure Financial Management. My name is Randy Cook here talking to Jay about issues of retirement. And if this is the first time you've heard the show, we appreciate you tuning in today. Jay is a pilot, which is why we got that whole Clear Skies thing going on. We want you to have clear skies in retirement as well. But this is probably a pretty good time of year to have that, have the plane up. It's nice clear skies right now. This is a good, I know you love fall, but spring could probably bring a lot of unknowns as far as weather is concerned, can't it? You got to watch that pretty closely, don't you?
Well, yeah. I mean, I was coming back from Atlanta when it was a little while ago, and this ties into retirement planning again. I had my flight plan filed and looked good, but along the way, my little plane, it takes a while to get from Atlanta back to San Antonio, and things can change along the way. Yeah. And a line of thunderstorms pop up right in my way, and I wasn't planning to go and visit Baton Rouge, but that's where I ended up to get some fuel and avoid the storms, and then let them pass through, and then on the way. But hey, you've always got backups ready for that sort of stuff, just like you should have in retirement.
There you go. You're going to have to take a detour here and there, that is for sure. Yeah. All right, well, one of the things that we talk about regularly in retirement is, how am I going to replace my paycheck? You're used to getting paid every 2 weeks. Then you get into retirement. There's a Social Security check that gets dumped into your account once a month. But then what? How do you make income in retirement? So there's a couple of guys. We've mentioned their names before. It means nothing to you, I'm sure. They're financial writers. They're researchers. They're in a lot of financial news. David Blanchett and Michael Finca. And they did a study. And they talked about how people spend in retirement. And they said if you have guaranteed income in retirement, that would be a pension, an annuity, Social Security, things that throw off a paycheck. You're going to spend out of that bucket probably 80% of what you need per month. You're going to go in there and you're going to get that because you know it's going to get filled up next month. But if you don't have that, and you're pulling from investments, 401ks, things like that don't get filled back up, you're only going to dive in there for about 50% of the money. So what they basically say is people who have that guaranteed income, that paycheck that's coming your way in retirement, they're going to enjoy their retirement more, they're going to spend more money, and they're going to have a little less anxiety about the future. So talk to me about that. I mean, is that what you find? Is that how you create things? Is that what calms people down as far as retirement is concerned? Just give me a paycheck, Jay.
Yeah, that's right. And, these aren't the only guys we've seen this from, right? Over the years, we've seen many articles like this that talk about the guaranteed paycheck, whatever you want to call it, annuity, Social Security, pension from jobs. People spend that money freely because the word guarantee is involved there, right? And as soon as we exit that space, I think people kind of want me to move on from explaining this to them sometimes. They're like, yeah, I get it. When we go and we talk about our investment portfolio, I was like, hey, we are leaving the guaranteed world now. What we're talking about now, the guarantee does not exist in this universe, right? And it doesn't mean it doesn't have its place, of course. Do we need to grow money during retirement? Could we be funding multiple decades in retirement? Probably, hopefully. But that is a very different experience in retirement. Hey, on the 1st or the 15th or whatever it is, when your Social Security gets dropped in there, I know that's going to happen. If you have a pension at work or you've recreated pension-like income, with an annuity, I know it's being deposited on whatever date it is. I mean, there's a sense of security there for sure. This
is one of the things about retirement that we all wonder about. We don't want to run out of money. We want to know where we're getting paid. We want to know what we're getting paid. And then we want to do stuff in retirement. Is that paycheck big enough to make my life the way I want it to be in retirement? And that is key. And so taking something like a 401k, taking something like anything, I suppose a property, anything, how do you build that? How do you make that into a paycheck like we talk about and put it in that guaranteed bucket? Because here you've got something that's tax deferred and it's not really built for that, and you're going to make it into that. How does that transition take place?
People getting educated on guaranteed income, annuities, pensions, whatever it might be, it should be a mandatory step, I would say, in your retirement planning. If you're a do-it-yourselfer, go and educate yourself on it. Most people, when they get into retirement, they don't want to run that risk of being a do-it-yourselfer and having something come up that you weren't expected. We educate people on it all the time. And this is what's very interesting is like once it's fully understood, a lot of people move forward with that and they say, no, I'm glad I understand it. I still don't want to do that. But the best example I have is we have a lady, a client in town here. She's been a client for years. We used to work. She was an executive at a big employer here. Did very well for herself, saved well. And her family lives out of town, and her parents are up in Dallas. And her dad was an executive. Who was it for? I don't know who it was. It was some big Fortune 100 company. But he's like 80, right? And he's got this really, really good pension from the employer. And a couple of years ago, we were looking at her investments, and I said, hey, everything's doing fine. If you want to think about setting up some form of guaranteed income, now might be a time to discuss it because we're in a higher interest rate environment. Back in 2020, when you could get a home loan for 2.95%, purchasing guaranteed income was not really a great move. We didn't recommend it to clients, at least. Now that we're in a higher interest rate environment, different story, right? So we start kind of having the conversation, and if you want to talk about it more, then we'll do that. And she's like, well, yeah, maybe, I don't know. And she's like, well, I think I want to go this route. Let me talk. She runs everything by her dad, which is a good idea. He's quite savvy. And she came back a week later, and she's like, yeah, this is great. Let's do it. And she was quite wealthy. So like she put $1 million of her savings or her 401k into there. And, it's going to provide her guaranteed income in the future. And I said, okay. So I guess your dad thought it was a good idea. And she's like, well, first he told me no. And then he called me and he's like, no, actually you should. And I said, okay. So tell me all about that. And he said, well, look, he said, first of all, when he heard an annuity, he's like, no, don't do that. Keep your money in the markets and grow it, right? And then she said he thought about it for a day, and he called back. He's like, no, you know what? He's like, I didn't think this through. He said, I have a pension. I have a pension through my job, and the rest of my wealth is in the markets growing. But you don't have that. You don't have a pension. So now that I've thought the whole thing through, if you can create a pension-like income for yourself with an annuity, then you're kind of recreating the situation I have, and I probably would do it. And she's like, I went through this whole like evolution, 180 degrees, or whatever you want to call it. And he said, if you can be in a situation like I am, now you've got to create it differently, right? She has to use vehicles through insurance companies to create that guaranteed income. He said, that's actually a really good move.
Interesting. Yeah, having that bucket that gets filled up every single month, I think, is something that we all want. And we don't all have a pension. They're going away. About maybe 15% of people now still have pensions. And so now we're looking at Social Security fills up every month. What else fills up every month? So these are options to look at. Give the team at Secure Financial Management a call. Give Jay a call. Here's the number. It's 210-985-6200. You're going from a time when you're getting paid every 2 weeks, and if you got paid again in retirement, once from Social Security and once from yourself, maybe that transition into retirement won't be as difficult as what you think. 210-985-6200 or the website retire210.com. Well, we hear it all the time. The number one complaint or the number one fear of people getting ready for retirement or in retirement is, I don't want to run out of money. Hear it all the time. Number two on the list now is inflation. When you go into retirement thinking, I'm going to do this on $6,000 a month, and then you find out you need $65,000 or you need $7,000, it gets to be a problem. So it's interesting. This is a financial advisor. Her name is Dana Anspach. And she says, well, I'm having meetings where people are talking about inflation, but the outcome of these meetings are kind of surprising.
Right now, where everybody's talking about the price increases of gas and groceries, we are routinely saying, we have built-in inflation raises for you. Would you like to increase the monthly paycheck that you receive? There's room to do so. And even though we test and we model and we show them that they could increase it and it's not going to increase the risk of running out of money, overwhelmingly, we are still hearing people people say, no, I'm comfortable on what I'm receiving. So they're absorbing those costs or making trade-offs, but nobody is expressing that they're feeling that pinch.
Okay. So first of all, have people come to you with that same kind of meeting? Jay, I'm coming up short. Yeah. It's costing me more to live than I thought. What can you do to help me? Are you having those kind of meetings?
Yeah, it doesn't. She's right, and there's also a second part to that too that we'll get into, right?
All right.
So yeah, out of the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of clients that we've got, it's far less than you would think that hey, I'm penny pinching. I feel like I'm short every month. It's very few people that conversation is happening with, right?
Okay.
But she's talking about. Well, this is what it sounds like. She's talking about kind of like the price shocks we're seeing a little bit right now, right? So, I mean, I filled up my truck the other day. It was $5.50 a gallon for diesel. And, it's one of those heavy duty trucks. So like, you're well into the six figures on the bill for that, filling it up. And like, yeah, you notice it. And, day to day, do you say, well, I've got to go out and I've got to find a way to, if we're still working, right? I've got to go and find a way to work, earn more money. No, I mean, it's temporary. If that continues indefinitely, it's a different story. And the danger for the inflation side of it in retirement is not, oh, gas went up this month, or airfares for my travel budget are a little bit more than I expected. It's the slow grind over time that erodes your finances, and not planning for that, that's a real problem.
Gotcha.
Okay. So, if we just think about, whatever, 5 or 10 years ago, like you're a golfer, Andy, I'm not really a golfer, but the greens fees.
Oh yeah.
Are they the same 5 years ago, 10 years ago? You see everything going
not even close.
Like that, right?
Yeah, we've gone from about 65 to about $100 a round. Yeah, it's gone up a lot.
Absolutely, it's gone up. But it wasn't 1 month you went there and you're like, wow, 65 to 100. You look back and you're like, wow, like this has happened over the last 5-10 years, and it just slowly creeps up. And this is where the danger comes in for not having comprehensive financial planning, right? And I've talked about this situation on the show before, but we get so much good feedback about this story, and it opens everyone's eyes so much to this problem that it's worth talking about again. And so this has got to be close to 10 years ago. We had somebody set up an appointment, and he came in. He was pretty young. He was early 50s. And he sat down. He's like, well, I do everything myself. I was like, okay, well, then why are you here? Right. and he said, well, I don't really. Anyway, he was unsure if he'd done his planning right. And I said, all right, well, look, you've already kind of set the appointment. I'll give you 30 minutes here. If you want to run stuff by me, so be it. And he was very, very thorough in kind of, he had his Excel spreadsheet put up, and he kind of, talked about investment returns and how much I'm contributing to my 401k. I think he was like 52. And his plan was to retire at 55, and he wanted something like $8,000 a month. Maybe it was 10,000. I can't remember, but it was, decent amount a month. And I've said to you before, over decades of doing thousands of financial plans, I can sit down with somebody, and once I've got a little bit of data, you've got a rough idea, okay, are we in the realm of reality here with what these people want, or is it just ridiculous, right? Is it just never going to work? And so, once okay, what do we have in a 401k? Do we have a pension? Do we have Social Security? What sort of debts do you have? How much do you need monthly? We start to be like, yeah, this might be possible. Let's get into the weeds, or this isn't going to work. And so this guy was going through everything, and he's like, it shows me from my calculations, his calculations that he had done. He's like, I'm going to be fine. And I said, all right. And I'm looking at the raw data, and I was like, just something's off with this. I'm not sure what it is, but these numbers do not look right. I mean, think about it too, right? 55 is retiring young.
Yeah.
So now we've got, say he lives to 85, 30 years we've got to fund this retirement for. So it's a lot of money. And I said to him, eventually I said, hey, what are you using as an assumed rate of return? Because, our process is we're going to be more conservative on what we think we can make. And if we do better, great. I'd rather people have that experience. And he said, well, 16%. And I said, all right, how'd you get that number? Well, that's what I got last year in my 401k. I was like, all right, well, probably you want to rejigger that, right? I don't know if I'd rely on 16% back to back to back with no down years, right? And this is, like I said, I think this is like 2016, 2017, something like that. And I said, all right, so next thing. So that's an issue right there, right? Very high, consistent rate of returns. I said, what's your inflation? And he's like, well, and to be fair to him, we didn't have an inflation issue.
At that time, yeah.
2014, 2015, 2016, there really wasn't much of an inflation issue. And anybody who understands investments, economics, like, yeah, but there will be, right? Something's going to happen, right? There's cycles. He said, well, I haven't built any inflation in. I said, all right, well, there's your two issues. This is why it works in your scenario, and I can't see how it works. Now, think about, I don't know what happened with that guy. It was the first and last time I saw him. I don't know if he kept working, retired. Don't know if he took any of the advice to hand or not. However, if he had, let's call it $8,000 planned out for his retirement, and he went ahead and retired with no inflation increases, no raises in his paycheck, if you want to call it that, for retirement, he's not living the retirement that he wanted. He's just not.
Yeah.
Right. If he was building his golf budget, like you just said, Randy, that's, what has it gone up? I'm trying to do the math in my head real quick. What has it gone up?
30-40%. Yeah.
More. Yeah. I was going to say even more. If 60's gone to 100.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. It's 50%, right? Yeah. 50%, right? He's not living the retirement he thought he would. Mm-hmm. So, she's right with what she said, like month to month, like, oh no, like everything's cool. Like I can weather this out. Yeah, you can month to month. You can't decade to decade.
Got it.
Yep. You can't do that.
That needs to be a part of the discussion when you sit down and talk through your retirement. Am I building myself some raises in over the years? So what I need now, I'm going to need more 10 years from now, and probably more than that 20 years from now. That's part of the discussion. Right. Let's have that discussion. Jay will do a meeting with you at no cost or obligation. Give him a call. Set that up. 210-985-6200. 210-985-6200, or use the website, which is retire210.com. At the bottom of the page here, there's a place for you to put some information in there. The team will reach out to you. You can also pick up a copy of Jay's book. It's called Wall Street's Game. So that gives you kind of a look inside the financial industry and all that you're kind of up against. You'd think that they'd be helping you, but there's some pitfalls there too that you need to know about.
That's true.
Website, retire210.com. All right, somebody wrote into the Market Watch Advisor column and they said, okay, how should I withdraw my money in retirement? And the person who was giving the advice said this: first, get into your cash, savings, money market, bonds, Social Security. Make sure you still have an emergency fund outside of that. Next step, get into your 401ks and your IRAs. You let those grow a little bit, then you get into that bucket. And then the last money that you spend is your Roth money. Does that kind of line up with the way that you would go about this, Jay? Is that too simplistic? Tell me how you feel about that.
Yeah, I mean, it just depends what's going on in that person's situation, right? And you can make arguments for lots of things, but letting your Roth kind of grow for as long as possible, and then you get the most tax advantage out of that. Yeah, I can see that. Mm-hmm. But if the markets are doing well, why would you not harvest some of those gains so that when we got some downtimes, and I got bad news for you, right? There's going to be some downtimes. Well, now we've got our cash in reserve.
Got it.
Right? And we can spend that. But the bigger question here, I would say, is it doesn't sound like there's a real comprehensive plan that's being put together for whoever this person is. Mm-hmm. Because if every month you're trying to figure out which bucket do I take this money from, the plan hasn't been put together very well, because this shouldn't be a question you're asking yourself every single month. And the reason this needs to be so customizable for somebody, right, is we had a meeting with a client a couple of weeks ago. Our clients who are retired, by far the biggest thing they all want to do is travel, right? I get it. I would like to do that too if I was retired, and probably a lot of our listeners can identify with that as well. And there's so many things you've got to manage when it comes to retirement, and you're in Medicare, because there's this thing called IRMA, which is Medicare surcharges, and all these different things you're trying to juggle, being tax efficient, avoiding surcharges, et cetera, et cetera. And I just mentioned before, like, let your Roth grow as long as possible. Yeah, I could see that. But different things come up for different people. So take this, for example, is they have a big trip planned for the end of the year. They're going to Antarctica Pretty cool. I would like to go to Antarctica. They're actually going to get to step foot on the continent, and it will be the last continent that they have to cross off, and they've done all the continents. Like, pretty cool.
Nice.
Not cheap, as you can imagine, to do a trip to Antarctica. And they said, hey, this is our thought process. Do you agree? We're trying to make sure we stay out of the IRMA surcharge, which is Medicare. We don't want this to cause a big tax hit, put us up into another tax bracket. We're thinking about taking the money to pay for this trip from our Roth, and I've got some fairly sizable Roth accounts. And I said, that was my thought too.
Okay.
Usually would I say, come and take a bunch of money out of your Roth to pay for a trip? No. But in this situation, we're achieving so much else by doing that, it makes perfect sense. So saying to somebody, this is the standard order that you should take money in. Your savings first, then your 401ks, then your Roth, wait till the end. For the average person, might that be correct? Maybe. But the people that we deal with, probably a lot of people listening to us too, they've got more complicated situations going on, right? And you need that dissected for yourself, for your situation.
Yeah, your retirement plan needs to be customizable. It needs to be different from everybody else's. And, I hate to say it, but sometimes when I ask Jay a question, he says, it depends. And many times it does. I think we should name a show that. We'll have a podcast named It Depends.
It depends, yeah. Don't you hate that answer? I hate it when I get it too. Yeah.
All right. Let me ask you about this just as we kind of close things up here today. And that is, if you talk to somebody right now, how you doing in the market? How you doing with your accounts? People will dwell on, I'm down 3%, I'm down 5%, I'm down 8%. And they many times will deal on the losses. And then somebody will grab them by the shoulders and say, look, over the last 10 years, you're up 160%. You're not down 3%. Wow. Okay? If you've been in the market a long time, Jay, how do we calm people down from the volatility that we have right now? Do you have to have those conversations where people dwell on losses and they don't see that big gain that they've had over the last 10 years?
Yeah, well, there was I can't reference it right now, but there was a study done. I'm probably going to butcher the explanation of this. Hopefully I get it across right. But it explains in life in general, and the markets, are part of this. A loss feels twice as bad as a gain of the same percentage, right? So as happy as you are if you see your account go up 5%, if you see it go down 5%, your negativity is double what the equivalent of the happiness. I don't know if I'm explaining that well. I think
I'm getting where you're going.
Yeah.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, right. And so, that's kind of human nature to do that. And it can be difficult to step back and look at the bigger picture. That's easier to do when you're working. Once you're retired, and if all of your income, or the vast majority of your income, is dependent on the fluctuations of the market every single day, well, it's hard to see the bigger picture when you're worried about, I'm supposed to take a distribution of $4,000 this month, but the market, it's down a few percent because of what's happening in the Middle East or whatever it is. It's harder to step back at that point and say, but I've done real well in the last 10 years. Well, what have you done for me lately? Right, that's kind of more of the attitude that you start to have is, what have you done for me lately? So I think it's a couple of things. It's what stage are we at in life? Anybody listening to us that's retired now, and you have still got everything invested in the markets and you got that volatility, I think if you're being honest with yourself, you pay more attention to it now than when you worked. Right? Because, hey, I'm in the accumulation phase when I'm working, and, it's down a little bit, but, I'm going to put my contribution in, the employer's going to put their contribution in, and, retirement's a long way away. Well, now, what you've got is what you've got. You've got to make your paycheck come out of that. You're not contributing to it. You're drawing down on it. So even though the truth is that, at least historically, it's something like 8 out of every 10 years the market's up. It's, it averages whatever it averages, 10% in the long run or whatever it might be. All those things are true. But statistics don't keep you warm at night when you're worried about when your next paycheck's coming from, right?
So true. You're listening to Clear Skies Retirement with Jay Kirkwood at Secure Financial Management. Those markets are not supposed to determine your lifestyle in retirement. You should have that paycheck coming in just like you have that paycheck coming in right now. How does that work? Well, that's a meeting with Jay. Give him a call. Here's the number, 210-985-6200. 210-985-6200. Get a no-cost, no-obligation meeting about your retirement. Get it all out on the table and get something down on paper. You can also find our website at retire210.com. And remember to have this podcast delivered straight to your favorite podcast platform by hitting like, follow, or the subscribe button. Thanks again for listening to Clear Skies Retirement, and we'll see you next time.
Investment advisory services offered through investment advisory representatives at Secure Financial Management, a registered investment advisor. Exposure to ideas and financial vehicles discussed are not designed nor intended to be applicable to any person's individual circumstances. It should not be considered as investment advice, nor does it constitute a recommendation that anyone engage in or refrain from a particular course of action. Past performance is not a guarantee of future results. Investments can fluctuate, and when redeemed may be worth more or less than when originally invested. Financial professionals are not licensed in all 50 states. To find out if Secure Financial Management is licensed in your state, please contact their office. Secure Financial Management is not affiliated with nor endorsed by the Social Security Administration or any other government agency. Annuity guarantees rely solely on the financial strength and claims paying ability of the issuing insurance company. By contacting us, you may be provided with information about insurance and annuity products offered through Wholesalers Insurance. Jay Kirkwood, Texas Insurance License number 1421850.